Okay, so I just got finished up with my very first shoot ever a few hours ago using my Sony ZV-E1. And I'm just gonna be honest, it didn't really go exactly as I expected it to. So I just thought while I'm sitting back here in the car and actually reflecting on it, it would be a good chance to do a video on how this experience went for me as a beginner using this while it's still fresh in my noggin. Because in my noggin, I was ready to just pick this guy up, go out, start shooting and get something solid. But once I got out there with him, it did just feel a lot different than I expected it to. Even with a bit of background in photography, I still found that there was a gap between what I was imagining and seeing in my head and what was coming out on the camera screen here. Like I'd have this idea of how I wanted things to look and how it should, you know, come out, having certain movements or certain flow to things or having light coming through trees in a certain way. But once I was actually out there with it, it didn't tend to match what I was seeing in my mind. It wasn't what I really envisioned. And I think that was probably the moment where I started realizing that it's not so much about just trying to get everything perfect as much as it is about trying to adjust and adapt in real time to what's happening in front of you with the tool. Because let's face it, the idea in your head doesn't really matter if you can't translate it onto film. And so as I was going through that and trying to figure out how I could capture what was in my mind to get it here onto the camera, I noticed how much time I was actually spending inside the camera itself in its menu, looking at the different settings, making sure that I was on the right white balance and making sure that when I was switching over to slow motion, that I was in the right manual mode, that it wasn't accidentally moving into a different mode. And there was a few different things that I wasn't quite prepared for, and I should have really got to know the menu system a little bit better before I actually went out. And this isn't the camera's fault at all. This is user error completely, but I needed to be more aware of the camera and its settings, I guess, before I just went out and started thinking I could just, you know, get whatever I wanted, however I wanted. And so the lesson is, if you don't know the camera that well, you are not gonna be able to use it that well. Duh. And you just end up getting frustrated instead of shooting the shit that you want to shoot, right? Okay, so another big thing that I struggled with due to my user error was exposure. Now, I'm not using any ND filters, and I do have the Samyang VAF lenses here. Oh, come on, iPhone, work for me, work for me. Anyway, they're not too bad. I've got the 24, 45, and 75, but I was just out with the 24mm and the 45 this morning. But yes, the exposure I did find very challenging. I wasn't using any NDs on this, no filters at all. So I was just kind of going straight into the sun and into the, you know, the changing light very constantly. And I thought I had a pretty good understanding of what exposure, you know, how it should be, coming from a little bit of, you know, background photography. It was very, very different than what it is, you know, sitting there and trying to set up, waiting for a shot to take, waiting for the light to get to a certain place. You know, with photography, you're just kind of sitting and waiting, and you can wait for the light to hit. But with film, everything is happening and changing in real time, and you've got to try and capture that and adjust to it and adapt to what's happening. And I really did struggle with that with this today. Now, we're just out in these little woodlands area with the sun coming up through the trees and stuff like that with my daughter. Thought it'd be a fun little thing to take her out and film her for my first time using this thing. Although one thing I will say is that with these Sony screens, it is really difficult to see your exposure and your focus properly. You know, like I did hear a lot of people reviewing this camera and Sony cameras in general saying, you know, like this screens are trash. And I was like, yeah, like how bad can they really be? But you know, it's pretty hard to look at. And I'm trying to learn to use the zebra function and focus peaking and all that kind of stuff. And once you've got these little zebras on the screen here, you can't see shit. So it's, you know, learning how to use that stuff as well and getting my exposure monitoring and all that stuff. Look, I'll just have to find a better way to use it, and I need to get better at it, right? But yes, quite often I did look back at the footage, you know, a couple of seconds after I shot it, and I was like, what the hell? That didn't look like what I was doing at the time. Okay, and then one of the last things I do want to touch on is the ergonomics of this camera. Now, this morning I didn't have this cage that I've got on here right now. I wanted to try and use the camera just the body, just to see what it was actually like and if it was suitable as a very portable camera, if it was usable for me with my thick dad hands. And the answer to that is no, it's not that easy to use with my dad hands. Just even holding the cage on here now, I feel like I could have a much better grip and control and feeling, like understanding of where I'm going with the camera, holding it like this now. But before, without the grip, it was just a little bit too, not flimsy or fiddly, but it was hard to hold. And aside from that, I think because it's so small and it's compact and there's not a lot of breadth in how you hold the camera, it's very hard to get steady footage. It is really tough to get steady footage. Even with the dynamic active stability on here with its IBIS mode, unless you're still ninja walking and you're going very, very straight and just going forwards and backwards. I mean, if you have any kind of sideways movement, it still jitters and it still moves. But if you're thinking about getting this camera, I would just say, if image stabilization is something that you really, really require and you highly regard, then probably don't look at getting this. And if you are going to get it, I would suggest finding a small gimbal for it, because that's the next thing I'm going to do, I think. It was something that I was a little bit disappointed in. If there was one thing I was going to be disappointed in with this camera, I'm going to say it is the fact that the stabilization it's pretty trash. I'm sorry, Sony, but it is. I guess just while we're on the cons, the other thing is the battery life. Now, this is a used model, so I can't really, say too much about it, because it might just be an older camera and it's just sucking a bit too much juice. But I've run 3 different batteries at 100% through this, and they all chew through juice super quick. I mean, if I have the camera on for an hour and I'm only shooting for a third of that time and going through settings and changing things and whatever, that battery is nearly kind of dead. So yes, if you're buying the ZV-E1, buy some friggin' batteries, or you might want to get a V-mount battery. But then it kind of defeats the purpose of having this little thing, right? I don't know if little is the best, but if you want to be able to vlog, and apart from the stabilization and the battery life, I haven't had any issues with the overheating today. I mean, I've only really had it on 2 times. One was to get the settings and do all my menus and stuff like that, and I had it on for about 40 minutes. And it was starting to get pretty warm, but I'd never got any signals. And when I was shooting this morning, we're out for probably an hour with my daughter. And the only time I turned the camera off was when I was switching lenses, probably 3 times. I did notice, like, the grip was starting to get a bit warm here, but the culprit right here where the screen goes, man, that got pretty hot, and it did freak me out a little bit. So I just took the battery out for 5 minutes and let it cool down, and it cooled down super quick. Like, taking the battery out, having this open, it's pretty cool here as well. Like, it's 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, so it's not like it's hot at all, but that is something that I will be a little bit concerned with, along with the battery life moving forward. But other than that, it really has just taught me that I need to learn how to film, and I've got to learn to understand this stuff and learn to be able to adjust to these things in real time. Learning videography or film or whatever you want to call it, it's, whilst the camera gear does help and it is needed, I guess, for the most part, if you want to get a good image, it's not going to make you the filmmaker that you think it's going to make you. Get to know your camera. So what have I learned through this? Get to know your camera, understand what the hell you want to do with it, and have a plan. And yeah, I can't wait to sit down, get all the footage together, which I'll be doing tonight. And I think tomorrow I'll make a breakdown video of how it looks. I've still got to try and figure out how to use Resolve, DaVinci Resolve. That thing looks like a freaking nightmare. But anyway, we're learning. So yeah, that's all I got. I've got to do groceries now. Catch you later.